All right. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming out here on a cold Friday morning. What I'm going to talk about today is some financial aid basics. Now, your situation might be different depending on whether this is your first year or second year, whether you're planning on going to a four-year school or remaining here next year. So I'm going to try to cover as many bases as possible during this presentation. The handouts that you have, one of them is the FAFSA on the web worksheet. And why I've provided that is because if you do decide to do the FAFSA for next year, it will have the questions that you may need to answer, you and your parents if you're a dependent student, which most of you probably are. This way you can be prepared to do the FAFSA, and it'll make the process go a lot smoother. Not all of the questions on these forms you will be asked because the FAFSA uses skip logic. So depending on how you answer some of the questions, it might skip some of the following questions after that. So the other handout is just some frequently asked questions about financial aid and just some basics about the types of aid that are available. So if you didn't get them, when we ran out, we will have them available on the back table when you leave. So today what we're going to talk about is federal and state student aid, institutional aid, and then how you can get scholarships from other sources. So what is financial aid? Basically, it is money to pay for college or career school. That's the broad definition. And that comes in some different forms such as grants, scholarships, work study, and loans. So grants and scholarships are free money. That's money that is given by either a state or government agency or a private nonprofit to help students pay for school. Work study is just like it sounds. You work on a campus job, you get paid for it, and then you can use that pay to help pay for your expenses while you're in school. And then there's loans. And loans you can get either from the federal government if you file a FAFSA or a private loan from an education lender. And you can find out more about the different types of aid at studentaid.gov/types. So who can get federal student aid? So this is just the most common things that you need to have to be eligible. You need to be a U.S. citizen or eligible non-citizen. You have to have a high school diploma or equivalent. Be in an eligible degree program. So you can't be a non-degree seeking student. You have to be in an eligible program. You have to have a valid Social Security number and also maintain your satisfactory academic progress. So what that means is you're not withdrawing from too many classes. You're not taking more classes, like a lot more classes than your degree program requires. And you're not, and you're keeping your GPA up. So that's basically satisfactory academic progress. How each school defines it can be a little different. So if you are transferring out, you might want to look at their policies. And then you can also find out more about eligibility at studentaid.gov/eligibility. So who can get other kinds of financial aid? So this just depends on the people who are awarding the financial aid. So states, colleges, private scholarships, they all have their own criteria. So if you are planning on transferring to a four-year school in the future, please check their websites, find out what their application process is like, and what you may need to qualify for the scholarships. Because they can be very different. Some colleges, you just do one application, and then the scholarship, they kind of match you up with scholarships. Other colleges, you have to apply for each scholarship individually. Here's some information about finding scholarships. There's one from studentaid.gov. Colby has our own scholarship page, so we have some external scholarships. And then also, if you are a Kansas resident, the Kansas Board of Regents has several scholarship programs, and you can see that at kansasregents.org/scholarships and grants. For state of Kansas residents, the FAFSA priority deadline is April 1st. You can do the FAFSA after April 1st, but the priority deadline for scholarships is April 1st. And the application deadline is May 1st for most of the Kansas Board of Regents scholarships. So how much aid can you get? That depends on how much it costs for you to attend, and then also your expected family contribution. So when you submit a FAFSA, the federal government calculates what they believe you and your family should be able to pay for college. It doesn't always reflect what you can actually pay, but it's their estimate based on the information that you put in. What we do to determine what your financial need is we take the cost of attendance from the program, and then we subtract your expected family contribution. And the cost of attendance includes things like tuition, fees, room and board, transportation, miscellaneous living expenses. Now, some of these things you're billed for, and some of these things you might not be billed for. But the reason we include all of it is so that you can get as much financial aid as you need to cover all of your expenses. So again, the calculation is the cost of attendance minus the expected family contribution. So you might not have financial need at a school like Colby where the tuition is fairly low. But if you go to a four-year college, especially a private college or an out-of-state college, you might find that you do have financial need because the cost of attending that college is so much higher. So the maximum amount, so how much financial aid you can get for the Pell Grant for 22-23 was $6,895. Next year it goes up to $7,395. So the Pell Grant does typically increase a bit each year historically, and it kind of went up quite a bit this year. For the Work Study and Supplemental Education Opportunity Grant, that amount's going to depend on the school you attend because each school has they each get allocated a different pot of money by the government, and it's based on enrollment. So that's why it's a good idea to make sure you get your FAFSA in sooner rather than later, because a lot of times these programs are first come, first served, and they're also for the students with the highest need. And then for subsidized and unsubsidized loans, those are loans that you get through the government. Subsidized, the government pays interest on those while you're in school, so they don't start accruing interest until you leave school. Unsubsidized, they start accruing interest as soon as they disperse. So the subsidized loan is the better loan to get, and that is explained on the handout. Freshmen can get up to $5,500 if they're dependent. Sophomore, it's $6,500. And then for juniors and seniors, so if you're going on to a four-year, it's $7,500. If you are a dependent student and you need more loan money, this is especially more for four-year schools, but we do have some students who get plus loans here. This is a loan that's in the parent's name. The parent, excuse me, the parent has to apply and be accepted for the loan. But if your parent does get a plus loan, you can actually cover the rest of the entire cost of attendance. So there's no actual loan limit for the plus loan, just the amount that is needed to cover the rest of your cost. And you can also find more information out about this at studentaid.gov. So for state and private scholarships, it just depends on the program. So you do need to do your research. Check for your other schools, and then check our website, the Kansas Board of Regents, and then studentaid.gov also has their own scholarship search. Just be aware that when you are looking for scholarships, there are so many free sources out there, you should not have to pay to get scholarship information. If they ask you to pay, it's most likely a scam. And also, with the exception of the studentaid.gov, if they ask for your email, you're probably going to get a lot of spam, so you might want to use like a spam email address for those, because like FastWeb and things like that, sometimes they sell your email address to their partners, and you might end up getting a ton of email. So how you apply for aid, you go to FAFSA.gov to do the FAFSA, and then also make sure the schools that you're considering, if you're transferring out to a four-year, to look at those. And then also you can look at our scholarships. Our priority deadline has already passed, but that does not mean that you can't apply for scholarships here. The application cycle is still open, and you can do that through AwardSpring in your portal. And then for private scholarships, you just contact the agency and get their information. A lot of times they'll have it on their website. Make sure that, especially if you're graduating and moving on to a 4-year, that you check your email or your Colby email for information. We will start processing aid for next year pretty soon. And you will be able to see that on NetPartner, which is in your student portal. A lot of schools have a portal similar to NetPartner for you to see your financial aid information, so make sure that you're aware of that, wherever you're going. Make sure that if the schools ask for additional paperwork, that you have it to give to them. Some FAFSAs are selected for something called verification, which is kind of like an audit of your FAFSA. And you might need to provide that information or else you won't get financial aid. Here are some frequently asked questions about the FAFSA. If your parents are divorced, the parent you should be putting on the FAFSA is the parent that you spend the most time with, as far as on breaks and things like that. If it is truly 50-50, then it's supposed to be the parent that provides more financial support. Now, really, this is something that it's up to you and your family to decide, but those are some guidelines to go by. If your parent on the FAFSA is remarried, you do have to include the income of the step-parent. Otherwise, because the FAFSA uses tax information, they run checks against the IRS and Homeland Security and all these other agencies. They know if your parent is remarried, and it will get flagged for verification. So you might as well just go ahead and include it, or else they're going to flag you anyway. This is very unpopular, but this is just the way it is. Even if you support yourself, if you don't meet the independent requirements on the FAFSA, you do need to include your parental information. So the FAFSA asks a series of questions to determine your dependency status. And if you can't answer yes to any of those questions, then you are considered dependent for FAFSA purposes. Now, sometimes there is a special circumstance where you cannot get parental data, even though you couldn't answer yes to any of those questions. In that case, you'll need to talk to the financial aid office and see if there's any sort of dependency appeal that we can do for you. If your family owns a business or has a farm, currently that is not included on the FAFSA, the value, as long as it's a family business with less than 100 employees, or if it's a family farm that you live on and farm. Now, some of the things about this are going to change in 24-25, so that's not the FAFSA now, but that's the FAFSA for next year. So if you are continuing on in your education, make sure that you are aware of that and are communicating with your school's financial aid office so that we can help you with the FAFSA, because it's going to be a lot less questions on the FAFSA, but the rules are going to be quite different. Here's also some things to know. The FAFSA will ask about assets. Here's some things that are included as assets. Real estate, but not the home you live in. Trust funds, mutual funds, stocks, bonds. All those things are considered assets. But, and this is what gets a lot of people in trouble, you do not include the home you live in, the value of life insurance, retirement plans. So a lot of times, especially parents, will report the money that they have in their 401k. And that makes them look like they have a lot more money than they really do. So you do exclude that from the amount of assets that you report. Some other common errors are Social Security numbers. Just make sure that that you're not transposing numbers, or you're not putting in, especially if your parent is helping you, a sibling Social Security number, because that can really mess things up. Income earned. We really suggest that you use the data retrieval tool, which kind of puts the information from the taxes onto the FAFSA to avoid a lot of these. Income taxes paid, a lot of times people will put the amount that was withheld for their taxes or the amount that they received in a refund. Neither of those are what was actually paid, so that can mess you up. Household size is another issue. A lot of times people, especially if you have siblings that are away at college or older siblings that still live at home, the definitions on the FAFSA are on the FAFSA, and if you're not sure whether or not to include somebody in the family or in the household, contact our office and we can help you work through that. And then also number of household members in college. For some reason, students who have parent that is in college cannot report their parent as a household member in college. But the reverse, a parent can report their child in the number of college, but not the other way around. So if you are a student and your parent is in college, you do not include them in the number of household members in college. So you finally got to the end of the FAFSA, and this is what the page looks like. It'll say, congratulations. It will have this 4-digit data release number. It will also have some statistics. You could put up to 10 schools on the FAFSA, and it'll have some statistics about that. It'll tell you what happens next. You will get a confirmation email. It will also tell you on this page what your expected family contribution is, and also what your, if you're eligible for a Pell Grant, it will tell you that as well. And it'll tell you about how much a Pell Grant that you're eligible to receive. Also, if you have siblings that are in college, right here it will give you the option to transfer that information to the other FAFSA so that the parental information does not need to be added twice. Now you will get an email from them. You should also receive something from the school. Do make sure that you go onto the FAFSA site and check to make sure that the information that you provided is accurate. Sometimes you, especially with assets, you might add an extra 0 and it'll throw everything off. It'll make it look like your family has a lot more money than they actually do, and then you are not getting aid that you thought you would receive. So do check your student aid report that is on FAFSA.gov after you submit it and it's processed. And then another thing, there are things that ask as of today. What is marital status as of today? Any of those, do not update any of that information if it was correct as of the day you filed the FAFSA. For instance, say your FAFSA parent is divorced, and you do the FAFSA, and 2 months later your FAFSA parent gets married. You don't go and update that on the FAFSA because as of the date you filed it, your parent was still divorced. So anything like that, if it says as of today, the only time you would correct that is if it was wrong to begin with. And if you need help with that, if there's something you're not sure about, just call our office and we can help you figure that out. Also, when it is time to go on to a 4-year school, if you choose to do that, make sure that you're looking at the school's financial aid offers. You should get an email from us if you're returning in the spring with a financial aid offer, or if you have our school code on the FAFSA. We do need to check for satisfactory academic progress, so that's not until the end of the term, so that's why it's a little later for returning students. And then also make sure you check your school's email. Now sometimes because the FAFSA goes based on 2 years prior, your family information might change. So say in 2021, your family made $80,000, but now your parent either lost a job or lost hours. Maybe they're only making $60,000 this year. Well, you can do something called a special circumstance appeal, and we can take your current situation into account and make adjustments to the FAFSA. So what you do is you file the FAFSA exactly how they ask the questions, but then you contact our office, let us know what's going on, and then we will request information based on what you're telling us. So say in 2022, your parents made $20,000 less, then we would probably ask for that tax return. So just contact us. Here's just some of the reasons why there might be a special circumstance. Say your parents were married as of the date the FAFSA was filed, but there's a change in marital status, and now one of the parents have separated. We can exclude that income. So that's one of the reasons, common reasons for special circumstances. Also, if the parent has child support coming in and that has ended because you've turned 18 or the age that they stopped doing the child support, that's something we can also exclude. That's just some That's just some of the reasons why you can do a special circumstance. Each school has different policies regarding special circumstance, so just if you think that you might qualify, just contact the school's office and they'll tell you where to get started. So finally, if you need more information, studentaid.gov is the first place to go. And then also, if you're a Kansas resident, make sure you're checking the kansasregents.org. If you're not a Kansas resident, check into your state. Most state programs require you to be in school in that state, but not necessarily. So do check your state's programs to see if they allow their funds to go out of state. All right, well, thank you guys for coming. That concludes it. Does anybody have any questions? Yep.